Hey guys, how we doing? Today we're going to look at the Middle Ages. It's the time period that starts right after the fall of Rome, and we're doing this through video. So just remember that as you go through, you can just pause this to answer any questions that you have. Excuse me. Um, so your first question is, what happened to Europe after the fall of the Roman Empire? And if you look at this map, it kind of shows you exactly what happens. Rome, and when we're talking about Rome, let's just get a pen real quick. This was the Roman Empire. Look at all this land. This was all Rome. And you can consider Rome to be almost like the glue that held this all together. And when the Roman Empire falls, what happens is Europe falls apart. It's really that simple. The way we describe it in class, imagine if you had a glass dish. Picture a big, huge glass dish that you held above your head and smashed onto the floor. Think of the thousands of little pieces of glass that you'd end up with. That's what happens to Europe. Rome was the glue that held this area together, and now with the fall of Rome, this entire area is going to break into thousands of little kingdoms. Uh, these barbarian kingdoms that we'll talk about in a minute. We're going to skip that. So the barbarians invade Rome, and Rome is going to fall. Uh, this time period, known as the Middle Ages, let's talk about the Middle Ages. The reason it's called the Middle Ages, it's actually really simple. The ancient world came first, and after the Middle Ages is going to come the modern world. And so it's called the Middle Ages because literally it's in the middle. Now, this time period also has two nicknames. It's called the medieval era, which, dun dun dun, guess what? It's a fancy word that means middle. It's also known as the Dark Ages. And that's the one I want you to concentrate on, the Dark Ages. Because you got to ask yourself, that doesn't sound very good, to live in a dark age. And we'll see why it was called the Dark Ages in a few moments. Um, one of the things that happens, and I believe this is question 3 for you. What were 3 specific results of the barbarian invasions of Western Europe? Well, we're going to talk about more than 3, but pause this as we go. One of the things that happens as Rome falls is that Western Europe becomes very, very violent. The barbarians are very violent people. They solve things through fighting and killing. And so that all those laws that Rome had set up, all the civilization that Rome had set up, it's going to disappear. It's going to disappear quickly. So Europe is going to be plagued by constant warfare. That's problem number 1. What's going to happen is almost a reverse of everything we've talked about all year. We've talked about since the beginning of the school year of people being hunters and gatherers, then going into small villages, those villages becoming towns, those towns becoming cities, those cities becoming civilizations. Now we're going to look at what happens in exact reverse. The barbarians start to attack all the big cities of Europe. That's where all the money is. That's where all the gold is. So the people who live in these cities say, I'm not going to stay here. I'm going to move out into the countryside where the barbarians aren't going to bother me. And so you're seeing the destruction of civilization. Another thing that happens during these dark ages, people forget how to read or write. Think about that. They actually forget how to read or write. All it takes is one generation of people not reading or writing, and that disappears. And it makes sense. Why would these people read or write? If I'm chasing you with an axe and I'm going to cut off your head, are you going to stop and read a chapter of your favorite book? Hopefully not, because you'll be dead. What you're going to do is you're going to drop the book and you're going to run for your life, hopefully survive, and learn how to fight. That's what happens here. Reading and writing is just not going to be important at this time. And so what people do is they forget how to read or write, and they use books for toilet paper because they have no idea what's actually written on the pages. Everything that the Greeks and the Romans invented, all the things we've talked about this year, are gone. The people of Europe forget how to build roads, aqueducts, buildings. They don't know. All that intelligence, knowledge that they had is forgotten because all they care about is survival. Another thing that happens is Latin disappears as the common language in Europe. Instead, what you have is all these barbarian languages mixing with Latin, and that's where you get your Spanish, your French, your Italian languages. So that's pretty cool. So the Roman Empire falls. All these different barbarian tribes take over pieces of what used to be Rome. You have the Frank tribe, the Burgundian tribe, the Ostrogoth tribe, the Visigoths, the Vandals. They all get pieces of what used to be unified Rome. And we'll talk more about the Germanic people and one of their most famous leaders later on this week. So we'll stop right there. This is just a quick introduction to the Middle Ages. So hopefully everybody's well, and I will see you soon.